everyone, and welcome. Let me check and make sure I have video, I have sound. Hopefully this is all working okay. I think I'm starting to get the hang of this streaming software situation. I hope, fingers crossed. Thanks everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. For those of you who are joining me live, either on YouTube or on Facebook, either way, if you'll let me know if you can hear me and see me okay before I jump in too far into the broadcast, I am going to go ahead and pull up the live streams in my browser real quick. Ooh, okay, we have sound. Hold on, let me mute this. I just want to make sure I have your comments in front of me if you're going to comment live. So here we go. Thank you for joining me. Let me see. Oh, there we have chat. Okay, so this is a little bit different. I'm going to have to bounce back and forth between chat windows today just because of how I have this set up. But I want to thank you for joining me on the broadcast. It's looking a little choppy on YouTube. I apologize for that. It's looking a little choppy on Facebook. I may have to check my settings at some point. And here we go. Let's dive right in. So this is the Sidereal Insights Astro update for June 15th, 2020. Are you ready for this? Oh my goodness. We are smack in the middle of eclipse season. I'm going to adjust my notes real quick here so that they are centered in the screen. Makes it easier for me to do the live stream for you. Diving in. So welcome, Sidereal Insights. I broadcast every 2 weeks on the Mystick Physick Astrology Facebook page and on YouTube. And what we do is explore the astrology of the current planetary transits across the heavens from a Western sidereal perspective. So we're using Western astrology, we're using a sidereal zodiac. Specifically, we're using the Fagan-Bradley zodiac, and I did not put a video description in for going live. I will come back and add links to the video description, both on YouTube and on Facebook after the fact. If you need to look up your sidereal natal chart, there's an online calculator that you can use for free at mysticphysick.com/sidereal tools. I'm Phaedra. I'm the astrologer and artist of Mystick Physick Astrology, and I use Western Sidereal Astrology in my practice. And really with my practice, what I'm concerned about is helping you reconnect with your soul purpose and remember why the heck you came into this life to begin with. So welcome to the broadcast. My aim here is really to provide guidance for you on how we can consciously use the energy of the transiting planets to affect our lives in a positive way. And so the idea is really kind of learning to respond to our transits rather than react to them. So we can look ahead, we can see what astrology is coming, what the transits are going to be doing, how they might interact with our own natal placements, our own progressed or solar return charts, get an idea of what we might expect, and we can tailor our behavior and our approach to accommodate those transits more easily into our life. And that's really ultimately the goal, using astrology proactively as a tool rather than just being buffeted about by what's going on in the heavens. And so I want to invite you to please like and share the broadcast, tag a friend if you know someone who might get benefit out of what we're going to be talking about here today. You can also follow Mystick Physick Astrology on Facebook, and you can always also subscribe to our YouTube channel anytime you like, and that way you never miss a broadcast. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of things. We're going to be talking about retrograde season. I'm going to do kind of a recap. I'm going to do a recap of where we're at with retrograde season. I'm going to talk about the upcoming new moon solar eclipse in Gemini. This is the second of 3 for the mid-year 2020 eclipse season, which I talked about in a recent video that's up on the YouTube channel and on the website. We're also going to talk about current and upcoming transits. There's some things going on that we're going to want to know about and accommodate into our planning. So first, let's do a recap of our current transits and retrogrades. We're going to start off with the retrogrades. Of course, let's launch in with Pluto. He was the first planet for the mid-year retrograde season that we have that generally lasts 4 to 5 months or so. Pluto was the first one to go retrograde, especially of the big outer planets. He went retrograde April 25th, so several months back. He's retrograde in Sagittarius, and he's just in the late degrees of sidereal Sagittarius. So he'll be moving on from Sagittarius soon. So keep that in mind. We had a week in the first part of May, kind of approaching mid-May, where Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter kind of all went retrograde within days of each other. It was like retrograde week almost. That was May 11th. Saturn retrograded in his home sign of Capricorn. He's still there. He will be for some time. We'll talk about that in a minute. May 13th, we had Venus retrograde in Taurus. She's still in Taurus. She's still retrograde. That's going to wrap up here pretty soon. We'll talk about that in a minute as well. And then May 15th, just a few days later, we had Jupiter retrograde in Capricorn. But he's about to scooch back into his home sign of Sagittarius just in time for the final full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius of our Gemini Sagittarius eclipse season. We're going to talk about that too. I got a lot in today's broadcast. So hang tight. There's kind of a lot going on astrologically. There's a lot to go over, and we're going to talk about each of these pieces kind of individually. So let's talk first, just kind of recap Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn's been in Capricorn since the end of January. He's going to be there until late January 2023. So this is a longer transit. This is going to make life challenging for folks who have Capricorn and Aquarius sun or rising sign, especially Capricorn sun or rising sign by the sidereal zodiac. You all can expect to be tested in the area of your life occupied by Capricorn in your sidereal natal chart in the coming 3 years. That's what Saturn does. He tests for weakness. And where there is weakness, you either need to make adjustments and corrections or expect whatever it is that's weak to break and fail. Okay, that's what Saturn does. He also tends to delay things and throw up obstacles and limitations, which we then have to figure out how to deal with, either to work around or to cultivate patience, whatever it is. So that's what's the story in your Capricorn house right now. We had Jupiter also join Saturn in Capricorn April 6th of this year. Now, Jupiter tends to spend about a year in each sign. And so he will be there until early April 2021. However, he's about to leave Capricorn to retrogress back into sidereal Sagittarius, and that's a little bit different story. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Jupiter and Capricorn, let's get specific here. Jupiter is in, he's poorly placed in Capricorn, right? It's not a good sign for him. I want to say I have this written wrong here. Jupiter, yes, is in fall in Capricorn. I do have it right. So this can bring out our dictatorial tendencies, right? One of the mal expressions of Capricorn is being bossy and trying to dictate to everyone what they need to be doing or should be doing. One of the more negative expressions of Capricorn and of Saturn can be a tendency to be judgmental. But we can also want to throw our weight around. We can maybe be prone to abusing our authority and using it to get our way, like my way or the highway kinds of attitudes. And this can also speak to escalation of commitment or being excessively stubborn and resistant to taking new approaches. When we have Jupiter in Capricorn, can also tend to make us a little bit of all work and no play, which we all know really isn't healthy. So be aware of those tendencies, monitor yourself for them, and try to mediate yourself in that regard, but also be aware other people can express these tendencies as well. And it just kind of depends on where Capricorn falls for them in their natal chart, where and how and in what area of life these things tend to express. Jupiter and Capricorn can also kind of make us want to rebel against authority in the sense of we want to push against limitations. We want to test boundaries, okay? It can also be a time when the chickens come home to roost, metaphorically speaking. So we might be called to own up to past actions, past decisions, past bad behavior. It can also bring about frustration. It can tend to make us a little stingy, a little miserly, and kind of lack generosity in some ways. So just be aware of those tendencies. Now, Saturn is retrograde May 15th. No, Jupiter. We're talking about Jupiter. Jupiter's retrograde May 15th through September 12th. So this is several months. And he's retrograding back into Sagittarius here coming up in just a couple of days. Late through June, he retrogrades back into Sagittarius, and he's going to be in Sagittarius until late November. So this is an interesting opportunity with Jupiter retrogressing back into Sagittarius. We get an opportunity for a do-over in the part of our life ruled by Sidereal Sagittarius. Now, this is the last opportunity that we get for that said do-over in the next 12 years. So use it wisely, right? This is a unique opportunity and you don't want to let it go to waste. Venus, let's move on. Venus is currently in Taurus. Let's recap that a little bit. We've been talking about this ongoing for a couple of weeks because she's got such an extended stay in Taurus. Venus is retrograde right now. Venus retrogrades usually only once every 18 months or so. And so that extends her stay in Taurus through August 2nd. That's an extraordinarily long transit for Venus to be in one sign. Usually she spends about 3.5 weeks or so in a sign. Her retrograde is ending coming up on June 26th, so very shortly, and then she'll move out of her retrograde shadow by late July, July 28th. She'll move on out of her retrograde shadow. She'll be back up to speed by then. Now, Venus rules Taurus. This is kind of an interesting thing. This whole summer retrograde season is kind of interesting because Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter even Saturn are all retrograde in their own signs, which it doesn't necessarily happen very often, doesn't necessarily happen all at the same time either. So it's kind of an interesting retrograde season from that perspective. Venus rules Taurus, so she's strengthened and supported there. But with the retrograde, of course, we know that's not a good time to be beginning activities. They're ruled by the retrograde planet. So for Venus, of course, this means things related to beauty, things related to love, things related to business and money and relationships, right? Now, we've covered this in a couple of previous broadcasts. If you're doing bargain hunting for things like art, antiques, what have you, valuables of that nature, that can be fruitful if you've had a purchase like that on your mind. If you've been planning it for some time, you might get a good deal. Something might come up where you can capitalize on someone else having to let something go at a loss just due to timing or circumstances, or someone letting go of something because they don't realize the true value of it, right? That can happen during Venus retrograde. And so if this has been something that you're planning, you may be able to capitalize on an opportunity. But if you haven't been planning a purchase of that nature, don't jump on something just because it lands in front of you, because it may not be the wisest decision for you. You may find later on that there is something not quite right, something flawed about whatever it is, and you may not get the true value for your money in that circumstance. So if you haven't been planning a purchase like that, I wouldn't go out making one. It's also not a good time for things like elective cosmetic surgery, major changes or permanent changes to your appearance. Don't go switching stylists or anything like that. Wait until the retrograde is over, unless what you're going to be doing is really, really temporary. Otherwise, you probably won't be happy with the results. Venus retrograde can also bring us back in contact with past lovers, but I wouldn't recommend beginning a new love affair when Venus is retrograde, because someone that you meet during Venus retrograde, you might not be seeing that person clearly. You might be kind of romanticizing the interaction in some way, or viewing it through rose-colored glasses. There's something that you don't quite have knowledge of or understanding of or a clear view of, and that won't necessarily come to light until after Venus goes direct. So I wouldn't begin a new romantic relationship right now, or make a commitment of some kind to someone new who's entered your life. Now, if you're talking about making commitments to someone that you've already been romantically involved with in the past, or someone that you've had an ongoing relationship with, that's different. But as far as someone new that you've just met recently within the last handful of weeks, or even the last month or two, I would be careful, slow down, take your time, wait until you really get to know them and really get to understand the full picture before you make any sort of commitment as to whether or not you want to begin a relationship with someone. Okay. If your relationship that you're currently in has issues, expect them to come up during Venus retrograde. So this is important in two ways. It's important if these issues haven't come up before and they're just entering into your awareness during Venus retrograde. This is an opportunity to really kind of examine them and get a closer look at them and get a fuller understanding of the type of issue and work towards a resolution with your partner. Now, if your relationship has been ongoing for some time and it's had issues that remain unresolved, you can full well expect those issues to resurface during a Venus retrograde period. So just be aware. You might need to reassess whether or not a relationship is really worth sustaining in the long run during a Venus retrograde period. Okay. So kind of shifting on, I'm going to switch gears because I want to talk about Mercury retrograde coming up. This is going to be happening very, very soon, but we also have the sun leaving Taurus, Sidereal Taurus, and moving into Gemini today. And that ties into our conversation about Mercury retrograde. And so I want to skip to talking about the sun and then circle back around to Mercury retrograde. Today, June 15th, until mid-July, we're going to have the sun in Sidereal Gemini. And when the sun is in Gemini, what this does is it really brings the focus to communication and the exchange of information and the exchange of ideas. Why that's important right now is because that's our environment for the coming 4 weeks, but also because we have Mercury having recently moved into Gemini, just June 5th, not too long ago, at the full moon lunar eclipse that we had in Scorpio. We had Mercury move into his home sign of Gemini. He entered his retrograde shadow. Gosh, do I have the date here in front of me? On June 2nd, so right before he entered Gemini, Mercury entered his retrograde shadow. And he's going to be in Gemini until August 2nd, which is the same day that Venus leaves Taurus for Gemini. So August 2nd, mark your calendar for that date. You're going to want to keep an eye on it. But as far as Mercury being retrograde, of course, Mercury rules Gemini. The retrograde is coming up. He'll be stationing on the 18th, so in just 3 days, and he'll be retrograde through July 12th. What's important here is that when Mercury is retrograde, this is an opportunity for a couple of different things. There's different ways that you can use this. It's an opportunity when he's retrograde in Gemini to clear the air, to reconcile with someone that you may have had a falling out with or a disagreement with, or maybe you have stepped away from contact with each other. It's an opportunity to reconcile with someone and to kind of make right, repair a dialogue, and come to a new understanding. It's also a time when you want to be watching for new information to come to light and adjust your understanding of something with the assimilation of this new information, new details, whatever they might be. Mercury retrograde is an opportunity to redo something, to review, to re-examine, to check for accuracy and effectiveness, to have a closer look at those details and finer points, tweak things as necessary, to rework, to revise, and then you're better positioned going forward to do things in a much more effective way, in a better way, in a more efficient way, with clearer understanding. Okay. Now, what I would encourage you to do, because we are coming into Mercury retrograde, it's not, people bag on Mercury retrograde a lot. If you understand what it is, there's ways that you can use it. And if you learn to use it correctly, you really can learn to look forward and enjoy Mercury retrogrades, which is something that I've come to do. And to do that, what I would encourage you to do is go back to your Mercury retrograde survival guide. If you have bought my guide, go back through and reread it. The beginning part explains to you things that you need to know about Mercury retrograde in general, in terms of what to do and what not to do, how you can use it, how you can work with it. And then it goes into a little bit more detail than the blog posts that I've written about Mercury retrograde and how to survive it. It goes into detail about how you can use Mercury retrograde depending on what sign and house he's retrograde in your sidereal natal chart. So you can align it with your natal blueprint and put it to work most usefully for you. And so I would encourage you to read that guide or reread that guide now, kind of refresh, look for where Gemini is in your sidereal natal chart and formulate an idea for how you want to use this Mercury retrograde. And then you can also watch my video, 5 Things Not to Do During Mercury Retrograde, to kind of just give you an idea of some warning actions that you should kind of avoid or just hold off on for the next couple of weeks. And when I circle back around to updating the video descriptions, I will put links to these videos in the video description so you can find them very, very easily. But like I said, this is a time to clear the air. It's a time to reconcile with someone, and it's a time to be watching for new information to come to light and to adjust your understanding of a situation or a circumstance or whatever it is that's going on in your Gemini house. Okay. We also have Mars in Aquarius right now. Now, Mars moved into sidereal Aquarius back on May 5th, and he's going to be leaving in just a handful of days on June 19th. Mars in Aquarius is really kind of about increased mental activity and exchange of information and disinformation or data or knowledge. It's about increased social activity. And I think we've kind of seen that, especially here in the United States. Aquarius rules extremists. Mars is a god of war. So this can bring the potential for violence in the streets, like I talked about back at the beginning of May when he first made this ingress. It can bring the potential for extremism, and it can be explosive in the right circumstances. So just kind of a word of warning about Mars transiting Aquarius. You want to really watch Mars aspects right now, especially to some of what we consider the more malefic planets, because that can trigger some explosive and kind of violent and aggressive types of events and behaviors in people. Now, on the 19th, Mars is going to shift into Pisces, and that's a lot different expression than Mars in Aquarius. Mars will be in Pisces through August 18th, and then he's going to move back home to Aries. Now, Mars in Pisces, this is a similar flavor to when you have Mars transiting your 12th house in your natal chart. This is a time of rest, a time of retreat, a time of recuperation, a time of relaxation. I'm going to go out on a limb here in a mundane way and say that Mars in Pisces is probably going to bring about a return of lockdown circumstances as it relates to COVID. Just calling it right now. Watch for that. You can probably expect it to come. Now, how do you want to use that? The best way to use that time is to go into active self-care and active spiritual practice, meditation, spiritual journeys, and explorations. It can also be a time, because Mars, of course, is about activity and drive. It's about doing, right? It can also be a good time to just re-engage or begin new if you don't have something to go back to, but to re-engage with activities that you like to do when you're alone, activities that you do on your own by yourself behind closed doors. Okay, so that can be another way that you can use Mars in Pisces. And like I said, June 19th through August 18th. Watch for that. Okay, now coming up, let's talk about, we've kind of recapped where we're at with retrogrades, with transits. Let's talk about what's coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and then we're going to take a little bit of a look further out about some things that we're going to talk about in the next broadcast. June 21st, we have the new moon solar eclipse in Gemini. That's going to happen at 5 degrees, 19 minutes of the Fagan-Bradley sidereal zodiac. Mercury rules that new moon. Mercury's retrograde. Mercury's in Gemini. Now, at the new moon, Mercury will be in a wide sextile to Uranus. He'll be sextile the transiting ascendant and conjunct the transiting part of Fortune. We will have Mars in sextile to Jupiter and Jupiter conjunct Pluto at that new moon. Now, there's a signature here that says surprises are possible. Unexpected news could come with this new moon. Other than that, the astrology of it suggests that it's a relatively easy new moon. The trouble is that means it's easy to waste the energy of it, and you don't want to do that. New moons are an opportunity to start something. Now, we have Mercury retrograde, which we don't necessarily recommend starting something when the ruler of a new moon is retrograde, but there's ways, like I said, that we can use this and use it proactively. So I would encourage you, take action with this new moon, but wait until, if you can, the eclipse news is delivered. And so the eclipse is going to be most active. I keep bumping my microphone. I apologize. The eclipse is going to be most active in the week before and the week after the new moon. So it should be active now, and it'll continue to be active until, say, the 27th or so of June. So hold on until the eclipse news or eclipse event has been activated for you. If you're going to be personally affected, if you need to know if you'll be personally affected by this eclipse, go and watch my June and July 2020 eclipse season video. I touch on that in that video, and I've time-stamped in the video description on YouTube each eclipse of this eclipse season, so you can jump right to the new moon in Gemini. So take action, but wait until the eclipse news is delivered. The right action right now can actually move you further on your path of growth and learning your life lesson. What I want to call out is that could include conflict. The right action could include conflict. So go back to something that you started but never finished and reconcile with someone. Restart something that's important to you. Reinvent yourself. Restore communication with someone. Or you could take a socially distanced trip somewhere you've been before and loved. You could go back and visit it again and really enjoy yourself. This particular new moon is also an opportunity to renegotiate something. If you need to break a promise with someone, you could do that now. Do it kindly, do it gently. But if you need to break a promise or undo a contract, you could use this new moon to do that. Now, what I really want to highlight with this new moon in Gemini, Gemini is the storyteller, right? This is your chance to tell a new story. Anytime we have a new moon in Gemini, it's a chance to tell a new story. What makes this particularly powerful is that it's a new moon solar eclipse in Gemini at Mercury retrograde. So you get to go back to a story you've been telling and write a new ending. That's some powerful magic right there, right? So what I want you to do is join me live on Saturday, June 20th. I'm going to be hosting the New Moon in Gemini Guided Intention Setting on YouTube and in the Sidereal Insights Astrology group. I got to figure out live streaming for that. I'm trying out some new live streaming software, and sometimes it doesn't let me live in directly into my group. So we'll see. But what I want you to do is go into this new moon looking at how you want to tell a new story in your Gemini house, and ask yourself, as you prepare to write that new story, what is your fairy tale ending? And then consciously choose to rewrite the story of your life in your Gemini house. Okay. Now, the key word for this new moon in Gemini is it's easy. It's really rather an easy new moon. I rather like it. It's a powerful eclipse opportunity. Don't let it go to waste. Join me for the broadcast. We'll see you there. We also have Jupiter retrogressing back into Sagittarius shortly after. So the 21st is our new moon in Gemini. And then opposite Gemini is Sagittarius, right? So the ruler of Sagittarius is going to retrogress back into Sagittarius the day after. So we have this nice astrological kind of balance going on in that regard on our Gemini-Sagittarius axis. Now, Jupiter will be back in Sagittarius until November, okay? And what I want you to look at here is go to your Sidereal natal chart, look at where Sagittarius house lies for you, and figure out how you're going to get it right this time. This is important. Make the best of now until November. This is your last opportunity to do this in your Sagittarius house for the next 12 years. That's big. So this is an opportunity for a do-over, for you to get it right in your Sagittarius house. And it's the last opportunity to do that in a Jupiter cycle. This one's on the universe. Don't let it go to waste. I really encourage you, don't let this go to waste. Okay? And then shortly after that, June 23rd, the very next day, we're going to have Neptune station retrograde. Now, Neptune retrograde is interesting because Neptune retrograde exposes secrets, lies, deception, subterfuge, things like that. And this is made even more impactful by the influence of the eclipses, which can also reveal secrets and hidden things. Now, Neptune retrograde at eclipse time means that there's a potential for those revealings to trigger irrevocable permanent change. Okay? With so many eclipse rulers retrograde at this time, in this case, the changes may not be permanent for some people, or they may not take their final form for several months, okay, once our rulers have gone direct again. So remember, retrogrades are a state of flux. Eclipse season is a season of change. So right now and for the coming months, things are in motion, circumstances are shifting. We're not going to see the final shape of things for several months, especially with regard to the Gemini Sagittarius eclipse series, which is coming to a close right now. Okay. And then lastly, as far as what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, Venus is going to station direct on June 26th. So just a little under 2 weeks from now. And what I would encourage you to do is to use these final days of Venus's retrograde to get really clear on what changes you need to make to reflect your new priorities and values. That reassessment that we've been talking about for weeks of you doing in regards to your priorities, your values, what's important, investments, relationships, business. Get serious because we're in the last weeks of her retrograde. Make sure you've done that assessment. Make sure in these next couple of weeks that you're clear on what changes you need to make in your life to reflect those new priorities, to reflect those new values, to reflect which relationships are truly important to you and which ones no longer are. One thing that I know I've seen in the last several months, because I do a lot of my astrological stuff on Facebook, I spend quite a bit of time there. And one common theme I've seen is people getting really particular and selective about what they keep in their news feed and what people they continue to be friends with in their social media and which ones they feel are no longer worth the effort of maintaining an acquaintanceship with or maintaining a relationship with. And that's exactly the kind of theme that a Venus retrograde can bring about, can trigger. Okay. So looking ahead, we're going to have retrograde Mercury conjoin the sun on June 30th. Okay. So the very last day of the month, we're going to have a Sun-Mercury conjunction while Mercury is retrograde. This could reactivate something that came up for you when Mercury conjoined the sun the first time. And I don't have that date in front of me. I'm sorry. If anyone needs that, let me know in the comments on the video and I will be happy to look it up and get it back to you. Hi, Daphne. She's watching from Cincinnati, Ohio. Work in progress. I hear you. Daphne says, I have Gemini rising 15 degrees, Libra, sun at 8 degrees, Cancer moon 24 degrees. Okay, so you are definitely going to be influenced by things like our Mercury retrograde. You're kind of widely within range of the actual eclipse. You're about 10 degrees or so off if your Gemini rising is at 15 degrees. But that doesn't mean you'll go unscathed on the eclipse just because, and I don't mean unscathed negatively, it's just the word that came out, because you do have Gemini rising. So one thing that eclipses can do, we know they'll affect us if we have a personal point or planet within range of the eclipse degree, but they can also affect us directly if we share a sun sign or rising sign with the sign of the eclipse. And so you'll want to keep an eye out for that, Daphne. You could have news delivered anytime up till a week after. And then if you watch my eclipse season video, no, did I talk about it in there? You'll want to watch the video I did on 3 important eclipse essentials you need to know, where I talk about how eclipses can affect us. There's some other dates that you'll want to keep an eye on as regards to this eclipse. So that might be worth watching for you, Daphne. I just want to kind of call that out since you're watching live. Okay. And I will, that's one of the links that I'm going to include in the video description when the broadcast is over. So watch for that. Yes, so the Mercury retrograde conjoining the sun, that can re-trigger the previous conjunction. And then what you may see, because once Mercury goes direct, we're going to have this conjunction again for the 3rd time. You're going to want to watch that 3rd conjunction date for more related to whatever this activity or event is, whatever this is bringing up for you, this conjunction, especially when you have Mercury rising or Mercury sun sign. That'll be important. Okay. Now, also coming up on July 5th, we have our final eclipse of the mid-year eclipse season, the full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. That's the last one in the mid-year season, and it's the last one in the Gemini Sagittarius cycle. Thankfully. Now, things may not completely settle down for those of us who've been dealing with the Gemini Sagittarius cycle. However, that's the last major eclipse. And so things will begin to settle down, and we will see whatever changes that eclipse cycle has wrought begin to kind of take their final form. And we'll get a clear picture of what life is going to be like in those houses as we move forward. Okay. And then also just a few days after that, we're going to have Mercury, of course, station direct, and that'll be June 12th. So watch out. He's going to station retrograde here in about 3 days, and then he'll station direct June 12th. But we're going to talk about all that and more on the next Sidereal Insights Astro update coming up on Monday, June 29th. So watch for that. I would say that it's going to happen at 1:30 p.m., but if y'all been watching lately, the Sidereal Insights Astro Updates broadcasts have not been going live right at 1 p.m. on Mountain Time, and they may not. What I may just do is say, hey, the video is going to be here Monday. Watch for it. We'll see how things go. I'm kind of shifting and playing with how the live streaming and the broadcasting is going and how it's going to work going forward. And I don't really have that final picture yet of what this is going to look like. So bear with me. The Sidereal Insights Astro Update will always happen every other Monday. So the next one will be Monday, June 29th. However, I won't promise you it's going to be exactly at 1:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay. And so that's really it for today's broadcast. Just a few announcements. You may want to watch my latest eclipse season video, the June and July eclipse season critical dates and degrees to know. In that video, I cover all the mid-year 2020 eclipse season with an eye specifically towards how to know if you're going to be personally affected, whether or not that effect is going to be challenging or easy to accommodate into your life, and what dates you're going to want to keep an eye on in the coming year if you are directly affected by any of those 3. And then if you want an eclipse refresher, I have a video, 3 important eclipse essentials you need to know. I talked about that. I'll include a link. I invite you, please follow us on Facebook, like and share the broadcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you click on the little notification bell right there in the corner, you won't ever miss a broadcast because I do upload all of these to YouTube. And thank you all for joining me, and we will see you again on the next video in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.